Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be talking a little bit, very briefly, about PostgreSQL versus MySQL, or not versus, but at least the differences between the two, or at least key differences. Whether which one is better or not, that's up to you to decide. I'm not gonna go into that aspect because each one's good for their own use case, basically, whatever the use case for that particular use case that you need it for. Now, some of the key differences between Postgres and MySQL. One thing is for licensing wise, MySQL falls under the the general public license, while Postgres is its own little PG license. It's kind of a little bit more restricted, so it's more a case where you can't really resell the Postgres license, Postgres database as part of a product with something else. Some SQL features now that are difference between Postgres and MySQL is that at least Postgres has some support for some advanced SQL, such as foreign keys and like views, triggers, and store procedures. MySQL is more like a little bit more limited than that. I mean, it does support foreign keys and some views, and triggers, but like some store procedures, it's a little eh. The other aspect is concurrency. Now, Postgres RPG or PostgreSQL, however you want to call it, I usually just call it Postgres anyways, not Postgre, kind of uses a more advanced concurrency control system called MVCC, which is multi-version concurrency control. It basically allows for like multiple transactions to be processed simultaneously and improves the database performance more than anything else. Whereas MySQL kind of, I mean, from what I'm familiar with MySQL, it uses kind of like a blocking read write system more than anything else, which is not as efficient per se. Now, the data types basically is Postgres has a much larger set of data types that it supports compared to MySQL. One of the big things is basically it supports arrays, which is really one good thing. H star, which is not used as much per se, and then of course JSON, which is another big thing, or JSON B, which is JSON binary. MySQL has kind of a limited more set of data types at that point. And the other aspect is as well Postgres the community wise Postgres it's much more larger and definitely way more active with the development community versus like the MySQL aspect where MySQL now is owned by Oracle pretty much, so it's kind of centralized, whereas Postgres is decentralized. um, I don't know what the other factor is like, what else could you say? I mean, like, the other big thing is basically with Postgres. I mean, there can be yeah, Postgres itself basically has one aspect where um, it's also I guess you could say it's an object relational database, whereas MySQL is more of a RD, traditional RDMMS, relational database basically. And then I guess the other aspect is basically at least at least from a Postgres standpoint, considering that it's an MVCC aspect, you've got a lot of high transactions that can be supported in the situations, and like concurrent reads and writes, which is great. Whereas MySQL doesn't happen on that situation. It's more of a case where MySQL, if you need a lot more performance in writes, then yeah, MySQL makes more sense more than anything else. Um, and then the other aspect is which is really good is with Postgres, as I said with the data types, um, it supports users. You could define the data types as well, so you could create user defined data types. And the other aspect is as well as inheritance too. But one of I think the biggest key feature for Postgres versus MySQL is Postgres at least allows you to create extensions that you need support for. That's where you have all these extensions already out there, like PostJS, timescale DB is pretty much an extension at that point as well too. PostJS, HStore was kind of it, and then you've got also the aspect of what Citus was before they got bought up by Azure, allowing you to create multiple sets, and then other foreign data wrappers that you could add in place as well too. Um, Besides that point, I mean those are the biggest key features right now. I mean there's definitely a lot more. I could get into more into it, but the problem is basically it will definitely be more than like an hour to 2 hours basically to show the key differences. And the other aspect is, I don't have the time to basically create a list basically for this to give it to all of us. Um, but outside of that, if you think, if you are going to ask like which one should you use, personally, I would go the Postgres route over MySQL. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, MySQL is great." I mean, yes, it's great to the point where, like, if you're doing something that's purely on a highly transactional aspect of just pure, a lot more writes than reads, then yeah, that does make sense to use MySQL. But quite honestly, at that point, if you're doing just pure writes, you might as well just use Cassandra. To be quite honest, because at that point, Cassandra much more faster and efficient than MySQL. Quite honestly. The other aspect is as well too. Sadly, is Oracle does own MySQL. Now you could always go to the other fork of MariaDB. Now that's another feature as well too if you want to go that route. But in reality, I don't know. Where at least with the Postgres community, one of the nice features with one of the nice aspects of the Postgres community is they'll look at other databases and they're not going to argue against other relational databases like, hey, you should use this Postgres over this because of that. It's for the use case, but at the same time, it's one of those things where they'll find the best of features. Quite honestly, like CTs, which was a big thing with the SQL Server. I mean, Postgres adopted it. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's pretty impressive and such. And they started using, and Postgres was the first one to actually support JSON as a data type. And once they started seeing once the other major database engines were seeing that, like SQL Server, MySQL, and of course Oracle, they make quick adoptions to that as well too, as a data type as well too. So it's one of those things where Postgres. And there's the other aspect as well too, is with the Postgres community by far much larger than the MySQL perspective. But again, that's for me, and that's for my personal choice basically. There's definitely a lot more facts. If you want to know more, there are definitely perfect places to research on this. But if anything, there's Crunchy Data. Crunchy Data actually is a great site to look at, and they'll actually, even though they're heavy contributors into Postgres, I would suggest you look into them, and they'll explain a little bit more some of the differences as well. It might be a little biased towards Postgres, but at least they will explain some of the more key differences and explain some of the differences as well too. I mean, when it comes to like transactional log shipping, at least with walls, Postgres supports that, whereas MySQL doesn't. Again, I've gone off and a little bit and added a little bit more to it at that point. But again, that's my personal choice. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you think I missed some more other key, very, very key features, let me know, and I'll not add to the video, but maybe add another video, or maybe create a much larger video for a much longer video. I mean, not larger, but longer video for this. And anything else. And please do subscribe to my channel. And again, you're welcome to leave comments and feedback onto my channels. Basically, I think now I'll be focusing a little bit more on the tech side of things, more of the tech stacks, and more tech oriented stuff, more than anything else. With that, I'll leave it at that. Unfiltered, unedited, and unrehearsed. Until next time.